Zaldrizes buzdaris gosdau.
In the Song of Ice and Fire book series, George, the author, R.R. Martin, he does this thing where he'll set up one of the biggest premises of the book in something called a prologue chapter. For instance, in A Feast for Crows, we learn about this dude, Pate the Pig Boy, who wants to, initially wanted to become a macer, but he's this poor kid that was sort of adopted by the Citadel at Old Town. He never really works his way up, and eventually he is tricked by this dude known as an alchemist to go and steal this master key that opens every door in the Citadel. And he trades this key for 1 gold coin, right? What ends up happening is, when he meets up with the alchemist gives him the coin, and we find out it's a faceless man. Then boom, Pate falls to the ground and dies, and now the faceless men have this key that opens every single door in the Citadel. Flash forward to A Dance with Dragons. That prologue chapter is this dude named Vermeer Sixskins. Basically, he recants his life story, and he's going to eventually try to steal the body of Thistle, who's this wildling woman who's kind of helping him out. She left him in this abandoned village to go and try to find food and shelter and help, and she's unsuccessful. And then when she finally comes back to him, he jumps into her body. Ultimately, is forced out, and then he goes and gets this lives on in his wolf's skin, one eye, right? And he's and now in a pack that runs into Breanne in summer. Like, when Breanne is working in the summer, Breanne runs into him later on in the book, right? So what I'm getting at here is the book kind of sets up what happens to Jon Snow. Now, before I jump into the rest of it, please do me a massive favor. If you enjoy my content, only if you enjoy it, and anybody that you enjoy here on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe. It's the #1 best thing you could ever do. If you can't do anything else for anybody you're a fan, if you're on YouTube, go ahead and pull that trigger and please subscribe to my channel. Also, slap a like on this video. Like goal is going to be 420. Zaldrizas postari, ixos daor alonat. Okay, so Jon Snow is killed at the end of A Dance with Dragons, right? There's a large chunk of the A Song of Ice and Fire reading audience that believes Jon Snow will come back, right? Even before the TV show came out and got to the point where Jon's killed, right? People who had read the books, I didn't start reading them until 2019, right? Or 2020. But people who had read the books back when they were being released, you know, for one, they still don't know Jon Snow's fate, but for two, they already knew he was going to come back. They knew it was possible, right? There's this dude, Beric Dondarrion, who's been revived 6 times, and he's nowhere near as special, lineage bloodline-wise, as Jon Snow. So it just makes sense. You have a red priestess at the wall, Melisandre. Everybody watches this happen, right? Like, it's not like in the dark, and Jon isn't tricked by Ollie. Well, first off, Ollie doesn't exist in the books, but he's not tricked by Satin, who's his, page steward kind of in the books. He literally, it's broad daylight. Jon just gave this massive speech in what's known as the Shield Hall, which is this large area where, when the Night's Watch was in its full power, most of the members who joined the Night's Watch were knights. So they would hang their old banners and shield in this place. But anyway, Jon gives a speech in there, and he tells everybody, I quit the Night's Watch. Come join me if you want to. You don't have to, but I'm quitting the Night's Watch. I'm forsaking my vows, and I'm going to go fight Ramsay Bolton in the Bastard Bolt down in Winterfell. Right? So when he does this, he leaves, right? And then he's walking through Castle Black, and then boom, he notices that one Wegdar 1-1, the giant, is smashing Sir Patrick Flowers up against the wall. Like, his head is a bloody pulp, and like the giant's freaking out because all of the other knights, the Queen's men, are surrounding him and they're sort of poking him. So Jon sees this, and then he calls this dude Leathers to try to calm one Wegdar 1-1 down, because one Wegdar 1-1 doesn't speak the common tongue. He speaks the old tongue. So in the middle of Jon trying to get them to calm the giant down, boom, those individuals that stab him in the back, in the face, in the neck, and slash his throat and all that stuff, they do it right there in broad daylight, right next to one Wegdar 1-1, right next to all the Night's Watch members, so everybody sees this happen. But mind you, I just mentioned, Jon had forsaken his vows. So the dudes who do this to him might not actually be punished under the laws of the Night's Watch. When Jon comes back, he's no longer the Lord Commander because he had just forsaken his vows. And his duty was until death. He died and he came back. Everybody saw it. So that's kind of like what's going to happen immediately when Dance with Dragons comes out, right? So the big theory is that Jon basically warged into Ghost, right? Because the last thing Jon says when the blood is pouring out of his body, his soul is leaving, is he says Ghost. And then he wargs, we think, into Ghost. Because Jon is a very powerful warg. His spirit wouldn't immediately pass on, right? Remember, I told you in the beginning of this video, Varmer Sixskin's prologue chapter at the beginning of A Dance with Dragons shows you that this is possible. It's possible for a human spirit to live on in an animal's body if their human body dies, right? So the most accepted theory is that Jon's going to go into Ghost. His body will be resurrected by Melisandre, and then Jon will warg back into his body. Here's the thing. We don't know if that's possible. We don't know how long it's going to take for them to resurrect Jon Snow. We don't even know if the resurrection is going to be successful, because Melisandre has never done that. She's a Shadowbonder from a Shy, right? But she's not a resurrector, right? Like, Thoros of Myr just sort of discovers this ability, so it's totally possible that Melisandre knows about the ritual as well. She just has never personally tried it, and her power is increased at the wall. She no longer needs certain things that she had before to keep up illusions of her mysteriousness and magical abilities, right? Her power is increasing, so it's totally possible that she could bring back Jon Snow. We just don't know, right? What if Jon is dead too long and his spirit is trapped in Ghost's body, right? And like no one knows that. Like, what if they don't realize that Jon, his spirit is in Ghost, and when they bring him back, he may not be anything aside from an empty shell of a person. That's one thing Beric Dondarrion kind of confirms happens, but you can safely assume that Jon will be okay because he only died once. It's like every time Beric dies, he loses a piece of himself until in the very end, he's the shallow aspect of who he formerly was, and he doesn't even remember his life entirely. Like, he loses chunks of his memory, he loses pieces of himself. He's no longer, like I said, the same person he was the first time he died. So if this is the first time Jon Snow dies, he'll most likely be okay, but there's still a possibility of him, and this is what I think is the most realistic theory, right? And then I'll mention the tinfoil one. But I feel like Jon will go back into his body, but a piece of him will always be in Ghost. And remember how it's mentioned that by Varamir in the prologue chapter that Jon ignores his abilities. He's denying them. He like doesn't he's untrained. So Varamir realizes that he could take Ghost. Like, Varamir's like, I'll take Ghost from Jon Snow, because Jon is not a he's a talented warg, but he doesn't have the experience. He doesn't have the training. He denies his gifts, right? So what if that problem is solved because a piece of Jon is now trapped in Ghost permanently? So when Jon comes back, he's not fully himself. Maybe he doesn't completely remember his life before in Winterfell or whatever, but his warging ability is increased tenfold, because instead of him only being in Ghost when he's dreaming, he can now look through the eyes of Ghost, just like Breanne. Breanne can warg into a crow and a raven like that. So what if Jon becomes the most powerful warg ever, and the only way it was going to happen is if he dies, and a piece of him is trapped in Ghost forever? Alright, let's pull out the tinfoil for this. One is tinfoil book, the second one is tinfoil TV show, if they come back with it, right? So, what if instead of, and I kind of got this idea because when I was making videos for Game of Thrones Season 6, I was trying to think of all the different ways that Jon could be brought back to life, and I knew that the obvious choice was Melisandre, but I wanted to think outside the box, and I was like, what if it's Breanne, right? And I still kept that theory in my head, at the back of my head, until it was confirmed that it was Melisandre, right? I still kept it in the back of my head. I was like, Bran's old god magic and being with Bloodraven. And then on the TV show, they set up Bran's return as him coming back as Luke Skywalker, right? After he has been trained by Yoda. So I'm thinking, I'm sorry. My son's on my brain. So I'm thinking, Breanne is going to have all these magical abilities. Bringing back Jon Snow is going to be the first thing he does, right? So that didn't happen in the TV show, but let's change that to the books. What if instead of Breanne bringing back Jon Snow, Jon stays trapped in Ghost and Breanne wargs into Jon's body, right? Breanne, it's mentioned how Bloodraven never leaves the cave. Breanne will never learn to walk again, but will learn to fly. What if flying is, a lot of people think he's going to try to warg a dragon, but what if instead he wargs a character who flies a dragon, right? What if he wargs into Jon Snow's body, goes and fights the Bastard Bowl, and when Daenerys comes over, marries her, rides one of her dragons, and becomes king of the Seven Kingdoms, but secretly it's Breanne, secretly Bloodraven, right? Like I said, super tinfoil. Let me know what you think about that. Tear it apart, rather, down below in the comment section. I think it's a load of nonsense. Although it is fun. I will say it is fun, right? And I've actually mentioned this before in great detail in a Stark live stream that I did several months ago that was like 2 hours long, where I just basically came up with every single theory I could ever think of for the Starks in that live stream. It's not linked down below in the description, but you can go to YouTube and type in Sir Hunt's Starks, and it should be one of the first search results that pops up. Right, so here's the tinfoil TV show idea, and then I'll get the heck out of here. Daenerys is, or has, blood of the wargs, right? She's got some northern blood mixed in with her. Aegon the Unlikely marries someone named Betha Blackwood, right? And everybody who descends from them is part Northmen, because Blackwoods are one of the only houses south of the Neck who have Northman blood, right? So Daenerys has traces of this blood, and it's actually sort of doubled up, right? So initially, like I said, Aegon the Unlikely, Aegon the Fifth, the egg from the Dunk and Egg stories, marries Betha Blackwood, right? And then their kids marry each other. So the traits from the Northman blood, the Firstman blood that they have, get sort of doubled up and then tripled up again, right? So Daenerys has a large chunk of warging blood in her, right? So here's the tinfoil part. What if Daenerys warged into Drogon, whether consciously or subconsciously, or like she knowingly did it or unknowingly did it, and this is why she burns the Iron Throne instead of Jon Snow, because Daenerys is in there, she's confused, and she's like, I know the whole reason why I just died, and the whole reason why this happened is because of this Iron Throne. So let me destroy it, right? Grab my body gingerly and carefully, go fly off to where I can be put back in it, and then I'll come back and destroy Jon Snow, right? She wants to maybe make it last. I don't know, like I said, super tinfoil. But I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could, please, slap a like on this video. Like was going to be 420. Super special shout out to Tyler Schnabel, Destiny Mix Queen, Phillips 420, Breanne Johnson, and the North Must Remember. They are all executive producers of this video over on my Patreon, patreon.com/100views and my Dragon Knight tier. Thank you for watching. Oh yeah, just to reiterate, those theories are Jon won't come back and instead is worked by Breanne, right? Breanne uses his body to become king of the Seven Kingdoms. Also, there's a possibility that Jon does come back, but a piece of him stays trapped in Ghost, so Jon becomes the strongest warg king ever. And then another idea was that Daenerys warged into Drogon, and this is why she didn't kill Jon. Alright, I'm going to get out of here.